Crazy Hawk 99 here. Today we're going to do a video that we shouldn't have to do, but every once in a while you got to remind ourselves of the reality of operating firearms, and that is bad things can happen. I'm a retired Army aviator, and I had a saying when I was in the Army that I kind of came up with myself. I don't think I stole this from anybody. That I'd tell myself before each flight, and sometimes during a flight, and that is, sometimes it's hard to look cool, but mostly the phrase that I used was, it doesn't take much to have a bad day. And by that, I don't mean a bad mood or things just not going your way. I mean, one minute you're fat, dumb, and happy, as the saying goes, and birds are chirping, angels are singing, and the next minute you're in trouble. So, and firearms the same way. I tell myself that same thing when I'm riding a motorcycle. I tell myself that same thing when I'm operating power equipment, when I'm working on firearms or shooting firearms. I try to tell myself the same thing. Just stick it in my head. That said, people make mistakes. People get complacent, and that's why we're doing this video. So as you saw on the opening screen, the rules of firearm safety: treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Don't point at the firearm at anything you don't want to destroy. Don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and be aware of what's before your target and beyond your target. And there's others that people add in there, but those are pretty much the basic ones. Now, first thing you should do when you pick up your gun, if you haven't had eyes on it the whole time, is check to see if it's unloaded. And by that, you're going to look into the chamber. You're supposed to feel it too. And the reason they have you do that, stick your finger in there, you can, is because the reason you stick your finger in there, because sometimes if you're just looking, just using your eyes, sometimes your eyes will tell you what your brain expects to see. So there's probably a name for that mental phenomena. If there is, drop it down below. Help me out. But basically, it happens all the time to cars, whether a motorcycle's involved or it's just a car. People will pull out in front of somebody because they're preoccupied, and they looked, and they might have looked right at the car coming and just didn't see the car because they were expecting there's no car coming. That happens frequently, way too frequently, with cars and motorcycles. Not as much as car and car, but it still does happen. But I digress. So I got a call a week or two ago by a friend of mine, old Army buddy, old Marine buddy, because I was in both branches. Old Marine buddy, I worked with him in the mid 80s. Good guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but I'll say this about him: good guy. Don't get me wrong, but he's the only guy I ever knew that could fall asleep standing up holding a cup of coffee. True story. But he called me, and he had actually he'd sent me a picture of his leg, and I'm going to paste that in right now. And that's my friend's leg. We'll call my friend Gus. It's made up. I don't know anybody named Gus, but we'll call him Gus. So Gus, then he said, "You mind if I call you?" I said, "No, I don't mind." He knows I have a Facebook channel and a YouTube channel, and I said, "Give me a call." And he called me, and I said, "Man, what happened, Gus?" And he goes, "Dude, I shot myself." He goes, "I had a negligent discharge," and he went into specifics, and he said, "Man, I know better. I was in a hurry. Somebody was coming over to the house, and we were going to go to the range. I was putting my range bag together, and I grabbed my pistol. It wasn't this exact pistol, but it was a Ruger single 6, so a 22 long rifle Ruger single action. This is a Heritage, and you just saw me clear that thing. So, and he said I, put it on half cock so I could swing the loading gate out and go in there and check all the cylinders. And he must only checked 5 of them. And because he said what happened was, when he went to, because as you may or may not know if you've never shot single action, But the only way to drop that hammer now is to pull the hammer all the way back, pull the trigger, keep the trigger pulled, and ease the hammer back up. So that's not what happened here with him. He goofed up, and he pulled the hammer all the way back, pulled the trigger, and his the hammer slipped out from under his thumb, and as it would be, there was a live round in the cylinder, and so he broke a rule, but he broke. So you can break one rule, and if you only break one rule, nothing bad will happen. I'm not encouraging you to break a rule, but if you only break one of the rules, nothing will happen. They're kind of overlapping in a way. You have to break two of them for something bad to happen. He broke two of them. He had when he did it, I don't know exactly how he was, and I'm not going to point it at my leg, but left hand, right hand, I don't know. And as I recall, I think it was his right leg, so I would assume he was doing this with his left hand. It's just an assumption, it's not critical here. But he had it pointed at his leg when the hammer slipped out from under his thumb, and it went off. It doesn't take much to have a bad day. It just doesn't. So he treated himself. He put a tourniquet on his leg, called the 911, and of course, with that, it's firearm related. So the law enforcement's got to do their thing before the medics could even act on you. They got to make sure it's a safe scene. But he went in surgery. They removed most of the bullet, but the bullet hit. First of all, it severed his main artery in his lower leg. That's bad, and it disintegrated on his bone, broke his leg, but it disintegrated, and they haven't even got all the pieces out yet because that first surgery there was just to correct the bad that was done to his leg. And this was, I think, when I talked to him, it was about I don't know, shucks, let's call it a week, 2 weeks most after the surgery. He still could, pardon me, still couldn't feel his foot at all, and he's still unable to put any weight on his leg. There's probably only one silver lining in this whole thing, and it's that he had a 22 long rifle. If he'd had a 44 or a 357 or heck anything along those lines, or even a 9mm for that matter, he could have done way more damage and possibly even lost his leg. So I'm just sharing this to remind everybody it doesn't take much to have a bad day. The gun safety rules, and it doesn't take much to get complacent either. I'm not defending complacency. I'm saying we're all human, and sometimes we're distracted. Handling firearms when you're distracted isn't something I'd recommend. Many ways that goes with some of the other hobbies I enjoy, like motorcycling. If you're distracted and you got way too much on your mind, you shouldn't be throwing a leg over the bike. If you're distracted and got way too much on your mind or whatever, you shouldn't be picking up a handgun or a firearm, period, handgun or rifle. Just trying to remind people of what we already know, and sometimes, even though we know something, we have to teach ourselves a lesson again. I can tell you how I cut the tip of this finger off with a log splitter, using a log splitter last year, and that I just relearned lessons I already knew. And sometimes we have to teach ourselves that, but we shouldn't have to, and I don't want you to have to. So by all means, I appreciate my friend Gus sharing this story with me, and I told him I'd share it and I'd keep his name out of it. But if any of my old Marine buddies hear this, they'll know who it was, because not too many people we knew fell asleep standing up holding a cup of coffee, but old Gus could. I'm glad it's not worse, and I'm glad he's on the road to recovery and hopefully fully recovers. Don't know yet, too early. But that's all I've got. I hope you all found this beneficial. Please consider giving me a like and subscribe, and share if you feel necessary. I'm not monetized, so I don't get anything out of that. But the liking helps the video come up to be more visible for other people. And this one's safety oriented. If this helps one person, reminds one person, then I've pretty much done my job. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great day.